The 20th century was a time where the African Americans were starting to get more recognition. The political and legal status for these African Americans were still low, but as time progressed, they were slowly improving. In the early 20th century, many African Americans were still being treated harshly simply because they're black. Families that consisted of both black and white members did not get along well. Whites usually distanced themselves away from their black family members, sometimes even proclaiming they're not related. And the Lacks family were not exempt from this treatment. However, that was no longer a problem, as by the early 1900s, the white side of the Lacks family had already separated themselves from the black. In the 1st of August 1920, a woman by the name of Henrietta Lacks was born, and she had led a normal life until the 29th of January 1951, where she had been pregnant. Normal thing, right? However, after giving birth to her son, Joseph, she started to have severe hemorrhage. Checking with the doctors multiple times, she had been diagnosed with epidermoid cervical carcinoma, a type of cervical cancer. She died on October 4, 1951 peacefully. However, in the background, Henrietta Lacks would be unknowingly boosting the progress of the medical fields, whether in finding cures for illnesses never been possible before, or simply boosting the understanding of human cells in general. And this is exactly what the Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks, written by Rebecca Skloot, would cover. However, I will not be fully covering what happens in the book, as that would be a waste of time. This will just be a review of said book and my opinion on it. Without wasting any more time, let us dive right into the review. The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks covers practically everything related to her home life, her family, and most importantly, the cancer cells extracted from her cervix that would become a breakthrough in the medical community. Additionally, Rebecca Skloot also documents the aftermath of the HeLa cell discovery and how the rest of Lacks' family responded to it. However, it also covers the author's journey on getting the information and experiences she needed for this book to become possible. It also explains the history of the Henrietta Lacks cancer cells, or HeLa for short, and how they've been relevant to the medical discoveries. The author made sure to interview everyone who were connected to Henrietta Lacks and medical experts who were part of the experimentation of the HeLa cells. The author explains each scene and each experiences in great detail, like we were actually next to her, interviewing who she was interviewing and experiencing what she was experiencing at the time. In the end of the book, the Lacks family finally have their closure, a closure from everything that has happened in their life, their pursuit for compensation and their anger at the scientists. It seems they all have finally reached their end. Before I continue, I would just like to give my utmost respect to the author. She took multiple years just to get this book successfully published, and even during the first year, she got nowhere with trying to interviewing the Lacks family. If I was her, I would have just given up at that point, but respect to her. It is not often that I myself would do this, but this book is a must-read, especially when you're starting on working with the HeLa cells. This book feels like something that should be read first before diving into the research. Who knows, this book may help you appreciate the existence of the HeLa cells a bit more. When I first saw this book, I'll admit I was already hooked. The cover wasn't the thing that hooked me, nor was it the title itself, no. The only thing that hooked me to reading this was the words Henrietta Lacks. It sounds crazy, but when I encountered that book, everything in my mind just instantly switched, and I instantly wanted to read it. I had been already interested in the HeLa cells for a while now, so maybe that had something to do with it and fueled my interest. However, something was pulling me to just read it. Even when I tried to ignore it, when I wanted to read something other than the main genre I read, my mind immediately goes back to this book. And it did not disappoint. The book was excellently written, and as I said before, it feels like you're in there with the author of the book, adventuring with them as they try to uncover the secrets of Henrietta Lacks slowly. It is not often that I feel this way, as most of the time I skim through the book and get bored easily. Even when I wanted to skip a chapter just to finish this faster, I had found myself reading this intently, making sure not to miss a detail. I found myself invested, tense on what happens next, and oh boy was it a doozy. But that just explains how great the book is, and in the end, in the last few chapters of the book, it made me smile when the family, who had experienced lows after lows, finally are getting their closure. I won't spoil what happens. After all, this is a book that is best read without spoilers. And that finalizes my review for this book. It was definitely a story, and my decision in reading it is something I'll never regret.